Welcome. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Linda Fedrizzi-Williams, and I am the president of Central Penn College. We are a college that offers certificates, associates, bachelor's, and a master's degree in Central Pennsylvania. We focus on delivering experiential, career-focused learning that excels and for treating our small community of students like their family. As part of being a valuable resource to businesses, entrepreneurs, and other nonprofits across the United States, we've put together today's program to try to provide some certainty in a time that's become really one of the most fluid and uncertain times in our history. Like the rest of you, Central Penn College is trying to get used to a new normal right now, with all of our employees working remotely. And even though a majority of our faculty have been teaching online for decades, it's the remote workforce of everyone else on our college campus that's very new to us. And we also don't want to lose productivity during this time, and that's what today's video is all about. So I have two special guests here with me today. We have Doug Fisher. Doug is our interim chair of our business department. And in addition to being a chair of a business department, Doug is also a very successful entrepreneur. He's been the CEO of numerous organizations, and he specializes in helping failing companies get back on their feet again. So Doug, thanks for being with us here today.
My pleasure, Linda.
And our second guest is local business owner Michael Fedor. Michael is the principal and owner of Bull Moose Works, an innovative consulting firm that is focused on building culture and impact in organizations. The college has actually been working with Michael over the last 6 months, not only on our strategic plan, but I've hired Michael and his firm to help my leadership team with development. So Michael, thank you for being with us today as well.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I have a list of questions for both of you. We'll go back and forth, see your take on working remotely, and try to help out all of these people that are trying to figure out a new normal. So Doug, we're going to start with you. What are business owners most worried about right now when it comes to working in a remote environment?
A lot. My phone has rung more with business owners calling me more in the last few weeks than it probably has in months. I am inundated with business owner calls, and the beginning of the conversation is pretty consistent. What do I do? They are quite concerned, very concerned about what's going on and how they're going to deal with it. Most of them have had to close their doors and lay off employees, valuable and trusted employees. There's a tremendous amount of concern, and that's rightfully so. We talk about it, and we work our way through it. And in the end, they feel comfortable that they will be able to get back on their feet. Well-run businesses have a significant cash reserve that they can rely on in these circumstances. And once we talk about the things that they can be thankful for, like having those good employees and being able to take care of them, and some of the things we've discussed in terms of taking care of them during this difficult time period and helping them grow and helping them stay engaged with the business and their own career. In the end, I think a lot of business owners end up being thankful. But the beginning of the conversation is, what am I going to do? It's a very, very disconcerting situation, and it requires conversation and letting them get it out, and then talking about all the things that we can be thankful for. And for example, this entire situation with this virus is remedying in a very rapid manner, in my opinion. And I think companies will be able to get back to work in probably less time than they originally anticipated. So I think we will all be pleasantly surprised with where it ends up. Right now, they are fundamentally scared, and rightfully so. And but again, once you review what's really going on, I think most business owners have been able to find actually some comfort and some thankfulness. And Linda, I think about the team you've assembled at Central Penn and some of the amazing stories I've heard of professors helping other professors in times of need. And it's absolutely heartwarming, some of the good things that have happened. And so, like I said, it's a deep level of concern that is somewhat remedied when you really think about it and putting things in perspective.
I agree with you, and you're right. It is heartwarming to see a lot of people stepping up and helping each other to be able to work remotely and just support each other in general. Doug, why do you think it is that some people find it very easy to work from home and other people just struggle?
Well, that's all about, in my opinion, our wiring. We are all wired uniquely, and our wiring is amazing, but it's different from every person. So this takes me to the students in our school and how some of them absolutely love and prefer to study online while others prefer to be in the classroom. Why would that be? Because they know that they either have or lack the focus and the discipline and the wiring that is required to be successful in one environment versus the other. So a lot of students have a preference. Some can do either competently, some have a preference. And that has to do with how we're wired and how we're put together and how we handle things. My wife, on the other hand, she's the epitome of focus. She's disciplined and she has tremendous patience, and she will sit down at a chair and work 8 hours straight on exactly the same task the entire day. Right. And she's the perfect work from home employee because she's very compliant, follows procedure, very easy for her to work from home, very pleasurable. And honestly, her employer probably gets more out of her than they do in a hectic environment. But then you take other employees that are, more of a high A type, high B type. I'm speaking to predictive index now in our wiring. Those folks need to be in an office environment because they crave so much the human interaction and the challenges of working with people. So it really has to do with how we're wired, and business owners have to send everybody home in these circumstances, and that creates a lot of anxiety for business leaders like yourself. But the fact is, right now, there are methods to make sure that everybody is still productive. It's just everybody needs to be dealt with differently based on their ability and their wiring to be productive in this environment. So it's about how we're wired.
So that's good. And it sort of leads to the next question. Michael, I'm going to come to you with this because you're right, Doug. There are people that thrive in these environments, but now that we're all forced, and not only are we forced, we're forced to be with our significant others in the same situation. We're forced to have little kids around that we're now homeschooling. We have pets that are coming into videos and that want to be walked because now you're home and you can be. So Michael, what is a reasonable expectation for employee productivity, especially in a crisis circumstance? And to put it another way, how much distraction, fear, and worry is to be expected when employees are navigating uncharted territory, such as having their kids home alone to work alongside them?
Linda, you put it the exact right question here is, what to expect of everyone right now. We are clearly in an unprecedented circumstance, and there needs to be a certain level of understanding, some real appreciation for what people are going through right now. And, even in the best of circumstances at work, your employees are not productive 75% of their day. On average, workers are productive 25 to 35%. That's your average employee. Right. What do they do in the rest of the day? They're talking, they're socializing, they're shopping online, they're on social media. Certainly, employees will all experience, and I'm sure some of you experienced this week, this rush of productivity. Suddenly you're at your desk, you're sitting in front of a computer, and like, oh my goodness, look at how much I'm getting done.
Right.
That will only last so long because people will start to overwhelm themselves with work. Email will start flooding their inbox because everyone's sitting at a computer terminal and they think that writing email is being productive, and boom, now I'm suddenly inundated with work. So I think there needs to be a reasonable expectation for what to expect from everyone right now and for the foreseeable future. There are different parts of the country are experiencing different levels of closure of schools and of businesses, and even the ability to leave your home is being limited in some communities, including in Pennsylvania, where we're all located. So expect that people are going to feel invigorated, excited for a while. Then there's going to be this dip, and that's where you need to, as management and as business leaders, step in and coach people through that dip in productivity when they start to feel overwhelmed, when they start to get confused about priorities, when they can't quite see a way out of it, and if they start to be facing, the uncertain question of homeschooling a child for the remainder of the school year, or continuing to work with home in cramped quarters, that stress will start to compound for people. So I think that you're seeing some companies actually already starting to address this with like virtual happy hours and some downtime. And I think it's really important to ensure that employees have a balance right now. And no one could certainly maintain a focus 7.5 hours or 8 hours a day in front of a computer terminal. That's not how we work at work. It's not how we should work from home either. You need to take those times to stand up, stretch, go for a walk, recharge, clear your mind. Yeah. That same type of balance has to be present here, even when we're all remote.
All right, so that's a great response. I'm going to have you expound on that a little bit further. When you have an employee and you want them to be productive and consistent, what can an employer or a supervisor do other than just giving busy work to employees?
Well, so that's a great question. And I think actually every business in America is trying to assess right now how much of employees' jobs translate online, translate remote. And I think you need to be realistic about that expectation. For many employees, it may not be realistic to consider that all of their work will translate to the home office. So let's be clear about those expectations up front. Secondly, every organization right now needs to turn that communication volume up to 11. Remote work requires, one of my employers one time called it lavish communication, right? And I think that's a good way to put it. You're talking about really over communicating, and that can look like a daily or weekly check-in. That can look like creating some anchors, like virtual documents, shared documents where people can collaborate. We really all need to be leaning into these fantastic virtual work tools that are available to us. I've been in remote circumstances since 2007, and the technology has only improved since then. So tools like Teams, which we're using right now to have this conversation, as well as Slack and some others, really allow people to engage in some really incredible communication. I think it's also really important to acknowledge that 90% of human communication is nonverbal.
Right.
So you have to make sure that you're not just talking to everybody on the phone all day long and think that you're getting the full story. And listen, every computer terminal made since I think 2012 has a webcam in it. Sure. Webcams are pretty inexpensive. Every smartphone has a webcam in it. So take advantage of that technology to see each other, to interact as humans do in a workplace, look each other in the eye, and get the read from your employees who are on these video calls. Are they in agreement? Are they shaking their head? Are they engaged, or are they doing something else? Who never turns their camera on? What are they doing? So make sure people are also being transparent and accountable. And I think you'll find that you can really, monitor and be on top of who really is going to struggle with this, and then identify, some supports to bring them online.
Okay, so Doug, I'm going to ask you a question very similar about communication during these types of times. From the business owner or the CEO or even leadership standpoint, do business leaders have to start communicating differently during the time of a crisis?
Oh, for sure. There's a tremendous difference in terms of how a business leader is going to communicate with their workforce in a remote environment as opposed to an office environment. And I think Michael just covered a number of those bases. I always recommend daily check-ins when it's a temporary situation like this one. If this were the norm, where you have a remote workforce, very much like a Netflix, for example, where a significant percentage of their workers work from home, then obviously those check-ins are more like a weekly event. But in a temporary environment, I check in with people daily and make sure everybody's doing okay, check in on their mentality and their workload. And relative to the previous question, I've never recommended that I've always recommended that business owners not be afraid to do two things in a time of temporary remote employment. And that is, one, show tremendous concern and care for the employee because it is different for them and it is a stressful time. And at the same time, be truly unafraid to say, here's what I need from you. I need a full day's work for a full day's pay because financially this company is going to be stressed just like you are. So I need everybody to pitch in and make sure we're getting a full day of productivity. And honestly, I think people will take that very seriously. The majority of people are loyal and will take that to heart and be maybe a little more focused on their productivity, especially if we're able to give them different means of doing so. So yes, the communication has to change tremendously. Like Michael said, face to face, It needs to be crystal clear. At these times, especially, it is absolutely imperative that we think through our message before it's communicated. To send a message out and then hope it's right, and to have to send a correction 5 minutes later really loses credibility for the business leader. And that's what you see in times of crisis often, is messages followed by corrections, because the employees said, boy, I don't know if I really understand that. And all that's required to prevent that is waiting before you hit send and really thinking about what is your message, maybe trying it out on a couple people and make sure they find no ambiguity in your message, and then communicating it to the workforce so that it is crystal clear, everything you say. And understand that no matter how hard you work at that, there will be someone who misinterprets it and just misses it, and that will happen. And that's not the end of the world. That's human, and that's all they're showing you, is that they're human and they didn't quite understand. And no matter how hard you work, that will happen once in a while, and you need to understand that, because this is a time when everybody's nerves are a little bit more on end for all the many reasons that you, Linda, know so well. How we respond to situations like that is very critical as well. So we need to make sure we always do respond rather than react to employees when they don't hit the cover off the ball in a particular situation.
Yeah, I would put a finer point on that too. And something I've seen you do, Linda, I think that really speaks to the moment here, is to be over communicating, not in a negative way, but to really increase the amount of communication that's coming out of your office. You've also done some innovative things with video communication and using some other internal tools. I think that helps to provide comfort and clarity, which I think are also really important. And to draw this back to productivity, when you look at things that increase worker productivity, communications really do have the largest impact, between 10 and 12%, right, to put a number on it. And the strongest one is that written communication. That regular ability to get on your email and understand what other people are doing and giving communication back and forth, that has a strong impact. Not to mention the fact that you're also just the opportunity to collaborate and speak face to face or on a phone. That also has a measurable impact on worker productivity. So I think there's a reason why both Doug and I are recommending increasing communication when you're talking about making sure people are going to be productive in these remote circumstances. It's because it has the strongest and largest impact on worker productivity.
Yeah, another key point on communication in that regard, Michael, for me, is the org chart. So if you think about your org chart and the way it's more or less a triangle, if you go back to that exercise you probably did in elementary school, where the teacher says something to the first student in the first row and they pass that message across the room, and at the other end of the room it has no resemblance whatsoever to what the teacher originally said.
Right.
If you allow communication to filter down through the org chart, that is exactly what will happen. So it's very important that business leaders communicate widely within the organization, so the message has alignment vertically and horizontally throughout the organization, because you will have that effect if you just let a message go down in tiers like you might under normal circumstances.
Excellent. That's exactly what I was going to follow up with. It has been remarkable from my standpoint to be sending out some larger communications to faculty, staff, administrators, and even students, and people just sending responses like, thank you, glad to hear what you're doing, glad to hear from you. There is a level of comfort from leaders, and you can either really make people feel very secure and confident in that you're handling things, but if you're too silent or you're only communicating to your leadership team, it creates fear and uncertainty. The rumor mill starts. And so you're right, there has to be regular communication. And in times like this, it does feel like, from the CEO standpoint, sometimes like you're over communicating or it's too much, and it's really not. It's really not. So thank you both. Okay, Doug. So then how is decision making affected when leaders are remote? Because workers are distributed, especially in a crisis situation. Does decision making and the way that CEOs normally make decisions, or leaders, change?
So that this for me, Linda, personally, is the most interesting aspect of this entire coronavirus situation because I'm a student of business decision making in business, and it's always been an interest of mine. And the first place I go is the economics Nobel Prize winner Kahneman, who wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow. And I'm not sure if either of you digested that one.
Yep.
It's not not a light read.
Not at all. That's
It is
good.
extremely valuable. So what happens a lot with decision making in the business environment during a time of crisis is extremely similar to what happens on the roadways and everywhere else. And that is that we feel emotion. And when we feel emotion, we are fundamentally rooted in what's called system one thinking, where system one thinking would be running to the grocery store every single day to make sure we have groceries and exposing ourselves to other people every single day because we feel panic, rather than cognitively deciding I'm not even going to go to a grocery store. I can have my groceries delivered to me and not even expose myself to that risk. That would be more of a metacognitive system two type of thinking, metacognition being thinking about the thinking. So we're getting a little deep here, and I don't want to go way down a rabbit hole, but fundamentally, I think it's critical that business leaders stop every single decision, and we make thousands of them a day, stop every single time and say, am I executing system one thinking or system two thinking? Am I thinking with my emotions and my heart, or am I thinking with my mind? When I think about laying off employees, do I say to myself, well, I can't afford to lay him off. He's worked for me for 14 years. No, you make a decision about layoffs based on the well-being of the entity. You take the emotion or the person out of the decision. You make the decision based on what's best for the entity, and then you replace the people and you execute based on what's best for the entity. And that whole process of the business decision-making process, which is being metacognitive, thinking about how you're going to think about a business decision, making sure that your fundamental biases don't affect your decision. So am I going to let history make this decision for me, or am I going to think this through? If there's ever been a time when the circumstances are unlike any other circumstances you've ever experienced when making a decision, this is it. Yeah. So it is the time to say, I'm not going to let history or confirmation or anything else make my decision for me. I'm going to think this through. I'm going to frame that decision. I'm going to look at it from an HR perspective. I'm going to look at it from a financial decision. I'm going to look at it from a people decision. I'm going to make sure I frame it properly, looking through all the proper frames. And then I'm going to filter that decision and say, does it set a dangerous precedent? Are there risks and implications involved? Could it possibly compromise my core values? And once I filtered that decision, then I think at that point, I know I've talked to the right people about it. I can make a wise, intelligent, cognitive decision that will really help the organization, not only from the standpoint of making wise decisions that will do the right thing for the benefit of the organization, but it will allow your employees to know that you are being metacognitive, you are thinking deeply about what you are doing, and therefore they will feel like you have an organizational rudder in the water, and there is logic and thought to everything we are doing, and it gives them a sense of comfort and confidence at a time when people almost naturally feel anything but, because you have to remember the majority of your employees will be embedded in that system one thinking where emotion is taking charge. And this is a wonderful opportunity to watch how business leaders are doing this and assist them in really stopping and thinking things through, just being scientific. You know, a business owner asked me, should I lay off my workforce or should I pay them? I don't think it'll be that long. I have the cash reserve. And I said, why don't you be scientific about it? Why don't you take your cash reserve and why don't you divide it, do the math and scientifically with your financial advisor, determine how long that cash reserve would last if you continued to pay all your employees. And he said, you know what, we did the math and we need to lay everybody off because it might not be long enough, and we need to be more careful. And the fact that he was scientific is comforting to him today, and he was very careful about how he handled it with his employees. And they're still, actually, it was really neat. It was a great example of leadership. The next day, they were all out playing Frisbee golf together, 6 feet apart on an open field where they didn't have to get close together, but they stayed as a team. And I thought it spoke tremendously to the leadership of that young business owner.
But that's a very difficult thing to do. And I want to ask either one of you a follow-up to this. And Doug, I know you get it because you've been a CEO, you've been in these situations, you coach people. Yes, you can approach things systematically, but coming from someone, myself, you really have a hard time taking the human element out of it. And it's extremely difficult. And even when you're making the right decisions, you know you're making the right decision, the stress that this is putting on these, especially small business owners, the emotional stress, not only just dealing with the remote workplace, but then having to lay people off. I mean, do either one of you want to speak to how do people take care of themselves during this time? How do you manage that level of stress when you're making these types of decisions, not even just daily, hour by hour?
Yeah, so I think number one, what I've seen you do at Central Penn College, and I think I've seen other businesses do, is make decisions based on the reality on the ground where we are. This is a very localized circumstance, and not necessarily making decisions based on what is happening far, far away, Seattle, New York. So you have to hold back. You have to be informed by the actual circumstances you're facing, right? We are not in a mandatory shelter-in-place order where we are located today, and that's true for more than half of the counties in America right now.
Right.
So there are opportunities here where we need to have decision making really informed by local circumstances, and then as Doug is pointing to, you have to also be informed by the data, by what is coming forward, and need to be staying ahead of it. What you don't want to be doing is reacting and getting behind, especially in a crisis, because now you're going to play catch up and you'll never quite catch up. I think also what Congress, the president, governors are doing right now is trying to provide some certainty. They're trying to put more tools on the table when it comes to economic stimulus, unemployment benefits, paid leave. These are things meant to try to take some of these really terrible decisions off the shoulders of business owners and CEOs, so there is a stronger safety net for people in an extraordinary circumstance like we're in. There still are no perfect answers right now. We're going to have to continue to operate day to day. But I think I always advise executives and leaders is to be a week or 2 weeks ahead of everybody else. Be thinking not as a leader on March 25th, March 26th, thinking as a leader now. It's April. What are we doing? How are we shaping the landscape? How are we reacting? What's our competition doing? And what are the opportunities? What are the things that are emerging for us in this market? Totally changing circumstance. We can start to seek out a way to be a solutions provider and continue to survive as a business.
So Linda, you asked a really great question there, and I'd like to expand on it a little bit as well. And that is that I say go back to your values. Every organization should have a crystal clear vision framework that states, what is our vision? What is the vision of our future? What is the mission we are on? And what are our core values? And if your core values dictate that all decisions will be made based on these values, and these values state the following, then that's the time to make sure that that entire vision framework is right in front of every business leader, so that they're referring to their values and referring to what the company stands for. Because if you can speak to your employees and say, I am in the interest of always being true to what this company stands for, I have made the following decision. There is great comfort in that. And on the other hand, you make a decision that anybody could say questions or compromises any value within your company, then you have an issue of trust on your hands, and you'll have employees possibly scratching their heads. So that's where I would go in that case. But again, you have to do what's best for the entity at the end of the day, so that there is an entity at the end of the day.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Michael, you specialize on helping people increase their culture and increase their morale at their places of organizations. Is there such thing as a remote work culture, and how can leaders build, reinforce, or even change it?
Certainly there is, and as you said, Bull Moose Works, which is our firm, specializes in building intentional positive culture for organizations. We're really seeing a moment where companies are trying to make informed, intentional decisions in their business practices to shape company culture. And this is absolutely going to be a set of decisions that impact what type of remote culture emerges for your organization. So a couple things that I think are going to drive positive remote culture for your company right now. Number one, you really have to increase engagement. You have to ensure that people feel like they matter, that there's something productive and important that they're doing, that they are involved in either decision making or great products. And that engagement level will ensure that your employees remain productive, that they remain positive, that they remain leaning in and doing something positive for the organization. I think you also need to make sure that you're managing stress loads in your organization, ensuring that you don't have management running roughshod on people and just throwing assignments all across the organization that have people running in 100 directions. To what end? So it's really important that stress management be an important consideration here. And as Doug said, it's an incredible time right now, and checking with those employees and making sure that they're not overburdened and not overstressed, and that they can manage this circumstance effectively in their home is really important. And I think that last point about culture is, create a routine. Create something positive that can be replicated day after day that people can hold on to, because routine in organizations helps to establish some baseline culture. And if that routine might look like, teams get on the phone or get on video chat at the start of the day, they hash out priorities, maybe they check in again at lunch. If you really have employees feeling isolated and alone, and they would normally be in the lunchroom together, have them do video lunches. Have some time for just casual conversation. Give them some chance to have that human interaction. And then I think it's also really important that you understand what people need to do to remain productive at home, and that really comes back to their role. So what is their role in the organization? Be clear about what those assignments need to continue to be, and create some really positive anchors so that they are producing work and that it's transparent, they're accountable. A lot of times in remote work circumstances, we see that digital documents become a wonderful anchor point. Creating a document, creating a slideshow, creating a slide deck, those become productivity measurements to know who's contributing, who's involved, who's leaning in. If everyone's just told to go search the web all day long and read email all day long, no one's really going to have a firm grasp on what people are up to. And that's going to create uncertainty, fear, and doubt, which you don't want to spread in your organization when it comes to culture.
So those were some really profound comments, Michael. And I think what you alluded to, but I'd like to make sure we clarify, is that a subculture develops during a time of crisis, in particular one like this, where everybody is displaced to working from home. You actually have a sort of a redefined culture, if you will, during this time period. And that's both a blessing and a curse, because it's really an opportunity to create a temporary, if you will, culture during this time where you help employees grow. You have that chance to really help them grow personally and professionally with the time that they're given above and beyond what they can do at home. So those employees that aren't completely productive, you have an opportunity here to create a culture of growth. Help them, get them into a class, get them into reading assignments, pick a group of fast track people that you really want to see grow, and get them on the phone every day or once a week for a couple hours and work their way through a business book and just grow together and get better. When you create a culture like that during a period like this, that will actually have a positive effect on your real overall culture that will see everybody settle back into it. When you go back to what was your norm, they'll bring back with them the feelings you give them during this temporary time. So I think a company has an opportunity here to show how much they care by making a cultural statement to their employees that, one, they care so deeply about them and they're so important to them. When they feel that during these times, they will come back with a loyalty that's tenfold what they experienced during the time they were out, and trust as well. But at the same time, this is just a great time to help employees grow. And that's a boost to any culture for any young employee to be able to take a class or read a book or grow in some way to help them better prepare for their future. So I think opportunity knocks culturally during a time like this.
There are a lot of opportunities right now, and you're both absolutely right, and those are excellent concrete tips. I mean, I could tell you that our college is really looking at helping a lot of local businesses out there with exactly these types of challenges. So if you have employees that are remote right now and they have extra time, they can do so much work, but they have extra time and you want to invest in them, you always have the credit option. You can enroll them in a class. We're actually offering opportunities to local businesses and organizations where they can send their employees and have them have complete access to our classes for non-credit. You don't have to pay anything. They can sit in our classes, learn cultural enrichment, take advantage of the time that they're home. Maybe it's an hour a day in one of our business courses. Those are resources we'd like to provide. We also have our faculty right now creating a host of videos that we're going to be sharing, videos on certain topics, videos about how to be productive, sort of like what we're doing here, videos for students that now have to translate to an online environment. And it's not specific to Central Penn College students. These are college students and even K through 12 students all over the country. So we're going to have a list of resources on that. I will tell any business owner, nonprofit out there, if you want more information specifically for your employees, you can send me an email. It's officeofthepresident@centralpenn.edu, officeofthepresident@centralpenn.edu, because we want to be able to help out our local businesses. We know you're struggling, and let us help you.
And I think I want to just jump on that too,
Sure.
Linda, and say that, it doesn't have to be local too. I mean, people are facing this across the country, and they could be listening to this podcast in South Dakota right now. And because you guys do such a remarkable job at Central Penn with online ed, the boundaries of a state are immaterial here. And I think that there's really an opportunity to, if you are listening to this and you are looking for a way to keep people productive and justify the spend of them on the payroll, make an investment. I mean, that's what Bull Moose Works does, is we help companies invest in their workforce. This is a perfect time to do that, and to do that in a really meaningful way that translates post-crisis into them becoming so much more valuable and a great resource for the company. And I would say too, when it comes to company culture, there's that slippery slope of productivity. That employee who's only productive 10 or 20% of their day can easily become productive 0% of their day, because it's an easy slide into nothing. But if you keep people engaged, if you keep them productive, we have a saying, we say, if you want something done, ask a busy person, right? Because they're that high D that wants to get things done.
Sure.
So keep the employees productive, keep them engaged, and you'll get more out of them. And that's what we're really saying, I think, here today, is the message is be intentional, be thoughtful. Don't just give everyone a pass and wait for this crisis to end and then put them back to work. Keep them productive and engaged right now for their mental health, for their personal well-being, as well as the health of your company.
Excellent message. So we have time for just a few more questions. I want to talk about some of these virtual meetings, because we're all having virtual meetings now, and it's very interesting. You get to see people's homes, you get to see their children and their dogs and their cats pop into videos. But let's talk a little bit, what are some warning signs that an employee is really struggling remotely? How do you coach that employee? And then more specifically, there's always a person that comes out on top. They thrive in the Microsoft Teams environment, and they dominate some of these meetings. How do you engage the more quiet employee who is struggling remotely? Either one of you.
Well, I think Michael already answered this question. To be honest, he was so passionate earlier about the need for video communication over just phone and texting and email. And he's spot on with those comments. If you're looking at a person and speaking to them and you're a leader, you're in touch. And this is about emotional intelligence. This is about being aware of the feelings of the people around you. You will sense that they're not themselves. I mean, one of the key indicators will be mistakes. Their mistake rate will grow if they are distracted or down. But you also feel it and see it in their face when they communicate with you, and you'll be cognizant of that fact. And you can ask them on a video call, just like you can when you're in a room together, look, I care about you. What's up? You just don't seem yourself. How can I help you? And then they open up about a sister that was exposed to the virus, or
Right.
The fact that they're depressed because they just miss human interaction, and they're single and they live alone, and they just aren't getting any human interaction, and it's driving them crazy. And then you might up your one-to-one calls to twice a day, just to give them that human interaction. But you might make a note that one of those two calls isn't, you don't talk shop. You just see how they're doing. You just let them get it out, and you become a little bit, leaders are part counselors too. And sometimes you just have to let an employee talk a little bit and get out how they're feeling, and let them expand it so that you can maybe give them a little bit of motherly or fatherly advice. And I know you've done a lot of this for a lot of people, Linda. It's your calling. It's part of your calling. And by golly, that's part of the job, is making sure we're helping these people. But there are some real risks in that regard. Michael?
Yeah, Doug, I'm gonna chime in on something I heard you say recently that's so prescient, and that is your introverts will hide right now in your organization, and you as a leader need to find a way to make sure they don't. And they will hide because on a video call or on a conference call, they won't chime in. They'll be silent. Their camera will be hidden, and you're not getting their input. And as a leader, you need to be far more intentional in hearing from everyone, even if that's to roll call. Hey, Joe, I haven't heard from you yet. Everyone else, please, let's have Joe give us what he thinks. Even if Joe agrees with everybody, give him the space and let him know his opinion matters. Also, look at absenteeism, right? Look at if you have some people who aren't making the calls or disappearing. I think checking in to find out the reason for it. And as a leader, it's important not to assume the worst. Don't assume they're just on Netflix right now, okay? The people, again, getting back to that point, extremely stressful circumstance. They could be worried about symptoms that are starting to emerge. They could really be struggling with an abusive environment at home with a spouse. They could be really worried about a loved one. Their kids could be driving them crazy. I think we can all relate to that. And if that's the circumstance, you can help coach them through that. And I think that, as you said, Linda, everyone's on these video chats, and our dogs and our cats are coming into frame. I think it's okay to let people know, we're not in a hyper professionalism environment right now. We're all kind of just navigating this. So, if the dog comes in frame, I think it actually provides a little bit of that comic relief that helps to calm people down, because people are really stressed out right now. So, have that understanding. Be human is so important.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right, and really laugh about it a little bit. We've been doing a lot of laughing at Central Penn College. I hear a baby crying. I can see that the new dad is getting anxious. I'm like, put that baby in the camera. Let us all see him, and then the baby comes in and everyone's smiling. And also one other thing, and then I want to summarize what you both said and give you an opportunity to wrap things up, but also sticking to a schedule. I think for employees, it can feel very uncertain about what to do with your day. I mean, I know for me, it's very helpful. We are creatures of habit. We like to have routines. We thrive when we have routines. So getting up when you normally get up, I mean, maybe you could sleep in a little bit. If you work out in the morning, still do that. Shower, get ready, get dressed. You certainly don't have to be wearing suits to work, but you can be getting yourself ready. And then having a normal schedule. Even my kids, Michael, I know you did the same thing with your kids. We created schedules for them. 11 o'clock's homework time, independent reading at noon, lunch at 12:30. Schedules bring a sense of routine, and in routine brings comfort. So that's another tip I'd offer. So let me summarize what I think I heard both of you say. We have to have a lot of patience right now. with each other, with our families, with things that are going on, being a little more patient, understanding that this is not for everybody. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people. For leaders, set priorities for your team and give direction. You might be giving a lot more direction now and giving people concrete things to work on and do than you would normally do if you're at an office environment. Being flexible, understanding that things are changing. It's a fluid environment. As a leader, thinking before you send an email or make a major decision, consult your confidants, consult your leadership teams. Invest in your employees. If they have a little bit of extra time all of a sudden, this is a great time to invest in their professional development, giving them extra tools to, one, make them feel valued and appreciated right now. And then when they do come back and you're in your normal working environment again, they can be even more productive and have tools that they need. And also, the one other thing that I would say is be appreciative. Everyone is giving it their all right now and trying to navigate this together. Sometimes giving a simple thank you and showing some gratitude and appreciation for the people that are working for you goes far longer than anything else that you can do. So Doug, any last words before we close out today?
Sure, Linda. Thank you for hosting, by the way. Tactically, I think it's a terrific time for business owners to say, what's working better during this time period? What can we learn from the experience of sending everybody home? Should some of our people be at home? Do some people function better on a different schedule? Because when people go home, sometimes a worker might actually work noon till 8 instead of 8 till 5 and find that they're twice as productive.
Right.
What can you learn from that? That coders and programmers are far more productive isolated than they generally are around other people. So there's lessons to be learned. What worked better? What worked worse? And what can we do with that knowledge going down the road? Strategically, it's a little different. I think I would like to see every business owner put a little sign in front of themselves all day that just says 3 words, and that is one, care. Care a heck of a lot about every employee and every customer, because this is a time when the dividends and the importance of sincere concern for people is absolutely paramount. Secondly, really think through your decisions before you jump to any decisions. Don't let System 1 emotional thinking cloud you from being really metacognitive about how you process decisions with your framing and your filtering and all the processes that go into that. And then finally, I think for business leaders, it's really important that every business leader, to begin with, have a coach, have a confidant, have a mentor, someone that they count on. Will count on them more during this, because I think, Linda, you can speak to this when you wrap this thing up. The pressures you feel at the top of the food chain when something like this happens really can't be explained.
Right.
There's just no way to explain what you feel and the emotions you feel. It's tough enough when you know you're responsible for the well-being and the livelihood of every employee in your organization, but then you throw in something like this, and the wear and tear that's what ages people. And I think it's really critical that I'm thrilled that my phone's ringing off the hook, and I'll assure you Michael's is too. People count on some advice during this thing, and sometimes they just need to get it out. So care, think, and coach would be the strategic elements that I'd recommend everybody focusing on. Thank you.
Wonderful, Doug. Thank you. Michael?
You bet. So I think for a lot of business leaders who are skeptical about the benefits or the value of remote employment or remote employees, this has been a remarkable and will continue to be a remarkable test case, right? That there are true values to remote employment and having employees who are not on site. And as Doug alluded to, there are employees who are going to find that if they work in an alternative setting or schedule, are even more productive than when you typically had utilized them. And so learn from this circumstance. I think we also need to recognize the nature of work, the nature of this economy will be fundamentally changed by this situation. We all have been told numerous times, this is not a 6-week circumstance. It's going to take a long, long time to work its way fully through the global economy and through global health networks. So let's recognize that the nature of work and the nature of your business is going to change, and start to think creatively about those opportunities. I really want to emphasize the importance of role-specific work for your employees right now. making time for them to really dig in and think carefully and work carefully on things they are supposed to do. And if not all of their job translates to a remote assignment, now's the time to make some investments and give them some opportunity for development so that they can continue to grow and be a valuable asset to the team. And then finally, make sure that people really feel engaged, and they feel engaged by being valued, by being trusted, and by you communicating with them. Communication is that strongest tool to increasing worker productivity. So let's take the time to communicate and do it in a way that's intentional, not scattershot, that isn't noise, that is truly empathetic, intentional, and powerful communication. I think you're going to see that you will survive the storm, that your employees will survive, and that we're all going to be, I have a lot of stories to tell someday for sure.
Well, I want to thank both of you. Really excellent insight from two CEOs, from two people that are engaged with other CEOs. You're right, Doug, when you're in these positions, it's very stressful, and it's, you're not just thinking about the life of your employees, you're thinking about the life and the stress of all of the people affected by your business. So for us, that's students. So every time I have to make a critical decision, I'm thinking about, how does this impact our students? How does it impact our employees? How does it impact our local community? And it's very easy to get sucked up in that whirlwind. And I spoke to a colleague today, and she was saying, how are you so calm? Like, how are you not completely freaking out over this? And I said, no, I'm stressed about it too. But I also recognize I only have control over certain aspects of the situation. So it's really important to keep perspective and to change the things and think about the things. And you're right, Doug, taking a step back and taking your emotion out of it and looking at things objectively and saying, what do I actually have that I can control right now? There are things, the dates that we can go back to normal living, that's out of our control. So what can we control? And I think surrounding yourself with people that you can trust, and knowing that there are people you can have these conversations with, and knowing you're not by yourself. This is affecting the entire world right now. So this is not just you and your organization and your business. We're going to come out of it. We're going to come out of it stronger. At Central Penn, we say our students are family, our employees are family. Right now, that extends to all of you that are out there watching this. Let us help you. We have ways to help you. We've been specializing in remote education. It's not new for us. So let us help you and your employees. Let us help you as businesses. Just let us know what we can do to be a resource. If there's a certain video you want to watch, if there's content, if there is a course or curriculum you want for your employees that we have capacity to put together for you, it's all on the table right now. So please reach out to me. You can reach out to me directly. It's Office of the President at centralpenn.edu. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you with a lot more videos to come. Doug, Michael, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.